Thank you.
I would note that this budget is up overall about $65,591, $60,780 due to pay/longevity, things above the first line, personal services. So,
Yeah, there is, and before Sergeant gets involved in the budget, the resident trooper line is a subject of some debate up in the legislative assembly this year as a result of the overtime fringe. I've been able to generate some activity along with my fellow members in COG and around the state with regard to the way the charges are coming from the resident trooper program. We just got notified that our fringe overtime was scheduled to go to 93% as of July 1, which is relatively ridiculous because they're charging us almost 55% on the first 100 in pay. So there's definitely some redundancies in there. And we did find out at one of the meetings we had with the comptroller's office that there are some dollars in that fringe that are being directed to pay off the unfunded pension obligations that still are outstanding, and they're taking some of that money to kind of retire some of that debt. So the argument that we have is, that's fine if that's what you want to do, but you're unfairly burdening 57 towns who have the resident trooper program, and the other towns who have state and police programs, chief of police programs, don't pay that money. So that's something that is subject to a couple of public hearings that happened a few weeks ago with regard to changing that, and it looks like there's some opportunity within the legislature to adjust that. Now, what that's going to end up to be will depend on what happens when the session is over, but we're hoping to get some adjustment and some relief in that so that going forward we won't be paying that kind of money. And I know that Sergeant Blanchette has often deprived himself of needed overtime and being on site in particular times, or he's, I suspect, been on site a couple of times and been generous with his accounting of it to do with it because he feels the burden of the town. But that is moving forward, and we'll keep that up to date, and hopefully we'll know as we get to the public hearing in the end of April, so maybe we can make some adjustments. Your Honor, Your Honor.
thank you, Your Honor. Any questions for the Sergeant Blanchette?
I certainly have a comment. I think that the 4.84% increase that's showing on the books is a little misleading. If I back out the grant overtime, which gets reimbursed to us, the actual increase, according to my calculations, are more like 1.75%. So if my math is correct and my reasoning is correct, I think that's a remarkable job keeping that budget in line, and I appreciate the hard work. I also am very thankful to your department because I feel like we live in a safe town, and I think you do it with less officers per citizen ratios than some other towns. So I'd just like to acknowledge that. Thank you.
And just, again, before you go on that, the police officers line 511 is subject to contract negotiation this year, which is why the number is the same as it was this year. There's no increase in there for the annual salary increase. Anna would have put it in there, but we do in payroll contingency have that expected raise in that budget line item. So whatever we do end up negotiating the raise, it will come out of that labor contingency line item and be added to that number. So we won't be looking to increase that number from outside the budget. See what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
The
We
money-
transfer from contingency into,
So we have two-
once the contract.
When we have contract negotiations, we have two contingency lines. One is the regular contingency line that we have for the town in case something happens, and the other is a labor contingency line, and we'll have both the fire department this year is in contract negotiations and the police department. So that number will also include any raises that the Board of Selectmen may deem appropriate for the non-union personnel, which will then be all taken out of that labor contingency and then put there. So we figured that out when we put that number in as to what we're hoping to end up at, worst case. So.
Anybody have anything else? I do have one thing, and it has to do with capital, not strictly under this budget. And that is, for the last 4 years, we've been supporting 2 cars a year, and that's been going very well. But I looked this year and we're asking for 3. And then I also look over the last, at least last year, because I brought last year's book with me. All-inclusive is what it was called under police vehicles, and it was $42,000 a vehicle, and that included not only the vehicle, but the computer outfitting the vehicle. Okay? This year, for 3 vehicles, we're paying $111,000, that's what we're asking for the 3 vehicles, which comes out to be about $37,000 per vehicle, and then we're taking $78,750 out of CNRE to outfit the 3 vehicles. So that brings you from $42,000 for a fully outfitted vehicle to about $63,000. And I just wonder why we're doing it that way, why we're not buying the completely outfitted vehicles that we were getting for $42,000 a vehicle. Instead, we're buying non-outfitted vehicles and paying $78,750,000 more, or $63,000 per vehicle. Probably something you can't answer here,
Well, we always did buy non-outfitted vehicles and added the outfit to it.
up until last year. And last year, part of the selling price was $42,000, and they came with the computers, et cetera.
No, I don't believe
No,
that's,
they,
I think you may have misunderstood. I don't believe that's ever happened. So I don't know what the end-up number was last year, but we can go back and look and see what the numbers were in terms of what the add-on package was to each vehicle, and what it turned out to be.
Okay.
But it's always been purchased separate. You buy the one car at state low bid, and then the other stuff comes in, and it may be in part, some computers were new when they may have been rolled over from one car to another. I don't know. I know you bought some used computers
I
at
did.
one point in time to try to get us through, but
When I was thinking of that, I said, well, maybe my memory's off, so I went back and looked, and what we said under police department, vehicles 2 per fiscal year, $42,000 each, all-inclusive package. And that's kind of how I remember it being sold to us.
yeah.
Just something to think about. We're paying about for $63,000 per vehicle if we do it this way this year.
I've never been involved in the numbers of getting the police vehicles. I just tell the fleet manager what I need. But I will tell you, this year is a little bit different. And I think that number may be a little misleading for the simple fact that I'm requesting for the first time ever a detective's vehicle.
Right.
In years past, I've been here 6 years, there was a detective before I got here, got promoted a year and a half before I got here. He's been getting used vehicles. We take a vehicle with 85, 90,000 miles, send it to the fleet manager, he strips it down, they get it painted, put some money into it, and the detective would keep that for another 2 or 3 years. One of the vehicles was actually donated. The vehicle that he has now has about 127,000 miles on it. It's a 2005, I think. It's one of the older, or 2006, I'm sorry. So I have a dog car that's still a 2005. But that's the only difference as far as the request I've made. That's not coming with a cage, that's not coming with push bumpers, that's not coming with strobe lights, it's coming with hidden lights and a siren. So I think when we're asking for a full vehicle, that number may be a little off because it's not getting a computer, it's not getting an in-car camera. It's not getting all the associated things that we need in the patrol vehicles.
Okay? Thank you.
I'll check that number, Mr. Chairman, because I don't believe that the accessories can cost that kind of money. They can't cost $30,000 a car. I
That's
don't.
the-
Yeah,
and
I know that it
that's
says
what
that.
we're taking out of contingency, out of CNRE is $78,750, and
Yeah,
it
we
just
have-
looked a little expensive to me.
Just so you know,
I wonder if she's taking a couple of payments out of there, but I know, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's worthy of, I put the check, the packing price here.
just so
That's
you
not
know,
right.
we're at a position, I don't mean to cut you off, we're at a position with cars where you'll notice that we have 3 blue ones left. The
Right.
blue ones do not have in-car cameras, which has been invaluable to us. But as those vehicles are retired and we get new ones, when we start replacing the white ones, which are now 4 years old, 5 years old, some of them with 70, 80,000 miles. We can take that equipment out of those cars because the cameras really aren't going to go bad. I mean, the state's been reusing in-car cameras for the past, 10 years. So I would suspect that we'll be saving some money in the future on that.
I think
Well-
you should have him speak a little bit to the need for the pickup truck as a patrol vehicle. Because this year we're proposing 2 patrol vehicles as we normally do, 1 car, 1 pickup truck. And he might, Sergeant may be able to give you better insight as to the use and the need for that.
That was after a lot of deliberation. We had, as I'm sure you're aware, one of our vehicles was a Ford Expedition, which is basically a pickup truck and an SUV frame that's recently been refitted for use by the town. We had that vehicle for 6 years. And it was a useful vehicle. We're able to carry all our range equipment. It's a 4-wheel drive with, a higher than normal vertical clearance, so we could take it off-road if we needed to, if we had to go out in the woods. And this is just kind of the next step. We're always at everybody's beck and call. If we need to move, we have an accident or a water main break or something that we have to get blocking down there, or traffic cones, or, in the middle of the night. I'll give you a perfect example. 3 weeks ago, there was a burglary, a commercial burglary that was reported in Industrial Park. Within 2 days, we were able to find the equipment at a pawn shop in Bristol, and we were also able to find some of it in Bristol, some of it in a nearby town that was in a storage shed. These were several 100-pound bronze pieces that were used for a manufacturing plant in Middletown that were being prepared. We had to get, at 10:30 at night, I'm getting calls at home so I can arrange to get a truck so we can get up there and pick these things up post-haste. And it becomes problematic sometimes. It'd be nice if we had a truck. We're picking up bikes down in Black Point or in Saunders Point. Can't fit them in the back of the cruiser. It just, and again, as Mr. Formica said, this isn't going to be a specialty vehicle. This is going to be assigned to 2 officers. That'll be their regular patrol vehicle, and they'll be using it on a daily basis.
Any other questions? And I want to reiterate what Camille said. I really enjoy living in this safe town, and your department does a lot to give me that peace of mind. Thank you.
I'm glad you have some good cops that work for you. You really do. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, back up to 118 Finance Department.
Got it all.
And Anna's out sick tonight,
Wasn't this a
so
conflict?
Huh?
Oh, well, it's Anna's department, right? Now we need her.
Anna's department, she's, really has grown significantly as a manager over the last few years with this department. And, she has a great staff that works really hard over there. She's established some good management techniques, as you know. This board has asked for the development of a manual or some kind of book to keep track of everything, a procedures manual. And in this HR coordinator, HR office coordinator, as you know, we married the HR manager position with the with the staff accountant who reconciled the bank books. So we have Renee in there 2 days a week doing HR duties and 2 days a week reconciling the bank book when that staff accountant retired. So we've put those together. Now that gives us for one Friday a month, 5 hours extra to come in and work on those manuals. And that's some of the things that they talked about in the audit that we need to start documenting. So we propose a 5-hour, 1 day a month on a Friday for Renee to do that. And she has some experience to putting those manuals together. So we think that that's a good fit and a good use of dollars. And that's the lion's share of the increase there. And again, you see a little bit of the increase in salaries. The finance director, I believe, is 50 or 40%, I'm sorry, subsidized by the water and sewer. So this represents 60% of her salary. 40% is in the water and sewer budget as she handles the finances for that. We will, at some point in the next few years, we're looking at, and I think we had conversation before about the need for new software program for the finance department, but I don't know that I've heard much about the uniform chart of accounts bill that's up in the legislature that was there last year. I suggested that we wait and hold off as to what the state implements as requirements for uniform chart of accounts for municipalities to balance them. And then I think we find out what's going on and then try to get a joint software program with the Board of Education and our finance and match, at least be able to comply with the joint chart of accounts that the state's trying to get everybody on. They're trying to switch to electronic, a fully electronic status up there. So that's something it's not in this budget, but I wanted you to be aware that we'd be looking at that. And then this wellness line item of 2,500 is kind of a leftover from the HR. With the new plan with Aetna, when we implement that July 1, that comes with a $10,000 wellness program fee, not fee, but a donation or fund. We're going to marry that with this, and there's also another $15,000 that will come with Aetna to communicate programs, and they use that for newsletters and things like that, but we can combine all of that and use it to support our wellness program. And I think it's important that we work and focus more on healthcare than sick care. So that's why this line, Renee's done a good job in stimulating interest amongst the employees, certainly here at Town Hall, and walking on their lunch hour when the weather is nice, and I think it's beneficial to the overall of our program. But that is the finance department.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Hearing none?
No.
Health and welfare, 419.
This is based, for the VNA, based on the numbers of people that they service. You know, we think this might be one of the opportunities for some savings once that clinic gets up, that we're gonna push to promote the in-town on-site clinic. So once we get that going, we'll see if it has some effect on that. But for now, this is the number, and you know, we need to support the number, I think.
Any questions from the board on health and welfare? Hearing none, we'll move to 522, debt services.
I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, that Anna has the breakdown, if you want more significant breakdowns of each of these line items. So I'm happy to have this put to another meeting if you don't find the information that you're looking for here. But we are showing an increase in the interest, and it's predominantly, you see line items 640 and 641, and that's the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which is the 2% interest on the regional interconnection, and that we need to begin paying that once we go fully online, which we expect to do in the next few months. So for the next fiscal year, this payment will be there. And then if I'm looking up, I'll see if I can. I don't know what these other general obligation bonds refer specifically to. I wonder if she has it.
The athletic, which one are you looking
Yeah.
at? The last one, the athletic complex in
Yeah.
Lager Hill.
Yeah, she has that in the back there. So what we've done with a lot of these things over the years is we'll short-term fund each project, and at the end of the year, we'll bundle them all together and then bond them out. We've been getting about 2.3% on that, and the detail is, it looks like she's got a pretty good detail in the back with regard to what each general obligation bond is and what it's paying for and the amount. The one item that we are still need to check, and I've actually called for a meeting with the former finance director with Anna and myself to go back and revisit what the sewer obligations were. And you note in that revenue, I talked a little bit when I introduced the budget to you that there was a reduction of about $600,000 in expected participation from the Sewer and Water Commission because they have accelerated, their payment was accelerated some point back in the 90s, and it showed up as extra revenue for the town at that point. But now, here we are, flash forward, and they paid their bond down significantly, so we couldn't justify a $1.2 million annual debt payment to them as we did last year. And we just were able to track this, and so we're going to need to bring that information to you as the process goes up. But we should know that in another week or two.
So what's the impact? I mean, there was a remark and public comment about something about the water and sewer. Is that in reference to maybe this outlier or trying to get information from the former finance director?
To be honest with you, I can't always comment on comments from
Right.
delegation, as you know. But I don't know what that number was that gentleman threw out. But there were a series of bonds that were created 20 years ago to pay for sewer installations, and there was a debt payment schedule, as best we can find out, to pay those off, just as we pay and just as you see here.
Right.
And what happened was, at some point in time, those revenues were shifted to the town to speed up the payments of that. It had the double effect of paying the bond off early, but also providing additional income and revenue to the town. And so that happened, I think before you. And
Right.
so then it kept that way. So
So it might be money that's actually due back to water and sewer?
Well,
If we, that.
I don't think
whatever happened 20 years ago.
I don't think we're
Maybe,
gonna-
maybe not. We don't know the answer.
I don't think we're going to owe them money, but I think we're going to have less money to get from them. So,
I see.
So,
Right.
so I have.
Reducing what we would normally pay going forward based
Right.
on.
Right, so
Okay.
what I'm gonna have to see is, can we do a refunding of some of these bonds to balance that out, or what effect is that gonna have on us if they're not paying and we don't have to pay? But it was revenue that all of a sudden we had that was above and beyond what the bond
Right.
called for. And so, nobody paid attention to it. And then we were looking and balancing all the figures, and this is what came up. So we're gonna go back, and we need to go back and establish that point of time to
Right.
exactly see where we were. We think it's somewhere in the mid-90s. So
What
so
about-
that's, that will come when we discuss revenue. And then the principal, payment is up. If you go the next line, 640 and 641, which are the same two line items, that the interests were up, there's the principal payment of 368 on that large expenditure for the drinking water revolving fund for the regional interconnection. There's also 50,000 in the 631 line item, and then small items up there. So the 631 line item is for the pool and sewer construction on Colton Road. So,
Mr. Marty?
Yeah, I heard just some rumblings based on comment that was made at our last meeting. Is there something about hydrant fees or fire protection that we should be looking at, or is that
well,
not germane to this?
there are a couple of people on the Water and Sewer Commission and some people in the community who believe that we should be charging the town a fee for each hydrant. Back when, I can't think, 10, 12 years ago, the high point that the Water and Sewer Commission charged the town was at about $75,000 in hydrant fees, and I forget the number of hydrants, or maybe 800 hydrants. Since then, it's been reduced. In this year's budget, we're paying $15,000. So I particularly am of the theory that if you're paying one pocket to the other pocket, it's
Right.
having an effect. Part of this bond that we just talked about, the Drinking Water Revolving Fund, is being paid by the town taxpayers in addition to the ratepayers. They're paying, the
Right.
ratepayers are paying the operation cost for that increased water and sewer, but the
And
town,
it's paying the
because of
interest
the,
cost.
because of the the anticipated economic development that this excess water will provide for us, the town is picking that up. So, the Water and Sewer Commission does not pay rent for its office downstairs, even though they're a separate utility, nor do we charge them to process their payroll. We also don't charge them rent for the O&M building to occupy that. That's where the superintendents live and their maintenance program is. And I just don't believe we need to. It's all part of the same program. But there are some people who believe that we should charge hydrant fees because other towns have different arrangements and they have hydrant fees in charge. So I said, well, that's fine, but what's good for one is good for the other. So we can certainly offset that charge with rent charges and other. It's ridiculous, in my view,
Right.
to even talk about this. It's working. The Water and Sewer Commission has been a challenge to get that budget in the black over the last few years. Part of the most of the revenue that utility gets is a result of flow. And with the economy, the flow went down, and with everybody asking to conserve water when things were tight, flow went down, and that has a direct result on income. So, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So we've been able to do a lot of work. We started in the last year that Mike was here, and then Ann and I continued over the year, but then Joe is really starting to analyze what's happening there. So we've also just hired a new mechanic, which is a new position there. You'll see when we get to Public Works that Joe and Bill, the director and the deputy director of Public Works, 25% of their salary is being funded by water and sewer. And we've just hired this mechanic who is now going to be able to repair things that we used to sub out. We didn't have the expertise to work on those pumps, to work on some of the complicated machinery that we have on the pump stations. But having this guy on site, we think, is going to more than offset any expenditures and certainly provide some savings because he's a talented young man and he'll be able to both work for water and sewer and get rid of that. And we need maintenance on our pump stations. We are looking at an aging infrastructure. You know the story of the pump station explosion that occurred down near Dad's. So we're still spending a lot of money to upgrade that. The insurance paid for some, but not others. So some of this stuff that's rumbling around, I disagree with. Some of it is exaggeration, and some of it there may be some truth to, as with everything else.
Thank you.
I have one question. Account 638, which is on the second page of your.
Where are we now? In interest?
Turn one more, under 522, three
Okay.
pages in, or the second page,
In interest, yep.
it talks about
Which number was that again? I'm sorry, sir.
638.
638.
Talks, and I don't know how I'm missing this, because it's probably said this for last year also. $740,000 for Main Street acquisition. What did I buy on Main Street?
That was the gas station.
The
we never bought.
$740,000 is the open bond for the mobile station down there. It's
Okay,
not been
which is
spent, it's not
still
been
open.
used. It is still open because I'm still trying to get that guy to sell it to us.
Okay,
So we haven't spent it, there's no cost involved, but it is showing as an open bond item that we can trigger if we can
Okay.
do it.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Long-range capital plan. And this is where I get the 78,750 for the vehicle.